What if the ache for a partner isn't love at all, but a quiet terror of meeting yourself in the silence? You lie there at night, scrolling through faces that promise to fill the void. Yet each swipe pulls you further from the person you once dreamed of becoming. The whispers of doubt creep in, reminding you of the dreams deferred, the passions set aside in pursuit of connection, the subtle ways you've let your essence slip away unnoticed. Ignore this pull, and you'll wake up one day in someone else's story, wondering where yours vanished into the ether, lost amid the compromises that felt so necessary. But let's lean into that emptiness together, allowing it to reveal what's been hidden, to whisper the truths you've been too afraid to hear. You wake up next to them, the morning light soft on their face, but inside, a subtle weight presses down like you're holding your breath underwater just to keep the peace. It's that moment when you swallow your truth, smile through the unease, because admitting the disconnect feels like failure. Your heart races with unspoken words, the kind that build walls instead of bridges, the regrets that linger like shadows in the room. This isn't just loneliness disguised. It's the first whisper of your deeper self begging to be heard, a signal that something vital is being traded away for comfort, a piece of your spirit exchanged for the illusion of security, a trade that leaves you feeling smaller each day. Pause here, feel that tug in your chest, that gentle ache that pulls at the edges of your awareness. What if we followed it deeper into the divide that's been growing unseen, layer by layer, revealing the fractures you've tried to ignore? Take a breath right now. Let that feeling surface without judgment, and hold it gently as if cradling a fragile part of yourself. You tell yourself it's normal the way you dim your light to fit into their world, molding your edges until you're barely recognizable in the mirror. This is what love requires. You whisper in the quiet hours, but deep down a restlessness stirs like a forgotten dream clawing its way back from the depths, demanding to be acknowledged before it fades entirely. This is the split, the polished self you present to the world, all smiles and compromises, versus the raw, untamed parts you've buried to avoid rocking the boat. Carl Jung spoke of this as the persona, clashing with the shadow, the hidden aspects of ourselves. We reject, fearing they'll disrupt the harmony we've so carefully built, the fragile equilibrium that keeps us feeling safe, yet so profoundly unfulfilled, trapped in a cycle of self-denial. Imagine it as a garden, overgrown with weeds you pretend aren't there. You water the flowers everyone admires, the vibrant petals of success and sociability. But beneath the soil, roots tangle in darkness, starving for air, twisting in ways that threaten to upend the surface beauty, to expose the chaos you've kept hidden. In relationships, we often project these unseen parts onto our partners, expecting them to heal what we've disowned, to fill the gaps we've created in our own souls, to bear the weight of our unresolved pains. You seek validation in their eyes, but it's your own reflection. You're avoiding the gaze that would force you to confront the incompleteness within the voids that echo with unmet needs. This Carl Jung shadow isn't some villain lurking in the corners. It's the unlived life, the passions sidelined for practicality, the anger swallowed to maintain peace, the creativity stifled under layers of expectation, all waiting to be acknowledged, to be invited into the light to contribute to your wholeness rather than sabotage it. Yet society whispers that being coupled is the ultimate success, that solitude equals defeat, a narrative drilled into us from fairy tales to social feeds, making aloneness feel like a personal shortcoming, a flaw to be fixed, rather than a space to expand. So you stay performing the role of the devoted partner, while inside the fracture widens, hairline cracks, turning into chasms that swallow your energy. Emotional suppression becomes second nature. You laugh off the soul hunger, convincing yourself it's just a phase, a temporary dip in the rhythm of life, but it lingers, sapping your vitality. But what if this tension is a call to individuation, to becoming whole on your own terms, without the crutch of another's presence, a journey that demands courage but offers unparalleled freedom? Jung saw it as the path to true selfhood, where you integrate rather than exile those shadowed pieces, weaving them back into the fabric of who you are, creating a tapestry richer for its contrasts. Think of it through another metaphor. You're a mosaic, beautiful in your completeness. Each tile, a facet of your essence. But in a mismatched union, pieces get chipped away to fit another's frame, leaving gaps where wholeness once resided, voids that ache with absence. The performance self thrives on approval, basking in the glow of external affirmations. But the authentic self craves expression, yearns to break free from the confines of expectation, to dance in its full, unedited glory. This inner war drains you. Burnout creeps in like fog over a once clear landscape. Identity blurs until the lines between who you are and who you pretend to be dissolve entirely, leaving you living on autopilot, wondering why joy feels so distant, so elusive, like a memory from another life. Here's where it deepens. Projection plays tricks on the mind and heart. That irritation with their flaws, the habits that grate, the quirks that annoy. Often a mirror to your own disowned traits, the parts you've pushed away to appear more palatable, more lovable. Carl Jung's Shadow Work reveals how we attract partners who embody what we've repressed, turning love into a battlefield of unspoken resentments, a dance of avoidance where true intimacy is sacrificed on the altar of comfort, where connection becomes a mask for deeper disconnection. You chase connection to escape the void, but it only amplifies the split, leaving you torn between the safety of togetherness and the freedom of self-discovery, a choice that feels impossible yet inevitable, pulling at the threads of your being. And yet in this fragmentation there's a quiet invitation, a soft beckoning from within. What if embracing solitude isn't abandonment but a bridge back to yourself? A pathway lined with the fragments you've scattered along the way, each one a clue to your true nature. Loneliness, Jung noted, arises not from isolation but from inauthenticity, from silencing the important things that make your heart sing the truths that define your soul. So pause. Journal this. What part of you have you hidden to feel loved? And another, when did you first learn to dim your light for someone else's comfort? And how has that shaped your path? Let those questions linger as we uncover the revelation waiting beneath, ready to reshape everything you thought you knew. Close your eyes for a moment, whisper that hidden truth to yourself, and notice what shifts, what softens inside, as if a long-held tension begins to release. You call it empathy, but maybe it's the way you disappear, vanishing into their needs until your own become echoes, faint and forgotten. You chase relationships like a lifeline, but here's the piercing truth. Most of what we call love is just elegant avoidance, a way to outrun the gaze of our own unmet soul. You've felt it, that hollow echo after the excitement fades, when you're left wondering if this is all there is, if the warmth you seek is merely a distraction from the cold truth within a temporary balm on wounds that refuse to heal. This is the moment of recognition. Staying single isn't a curse. It's the sacred doorway to facing your Carl Jung shadow head-on, where true wholeness begins to emerge, where the fragments start to align in ways that feel both startling and inevitable. Let me share a story that might feel achingly familiar, one that mirrors the quiet battles so many wage in the privacy of their hearts. Take Elena, a 32-year-old graphic designer in Chicago, always the one friends called the Rock, the steady force in every storm, unflinching yet unseen. She poured herself into a 5-year relationship with Mark, adapting her schedule to his ambitions, muting her own artistic fire to support his career climb, sacrificing late-night sketches for his late-night calls, letting her visions fade into the background. Outwardly, they were the perfect pair, weekend brunches filled with laughter, shared playlists that seemed to sync their hearts. But inside, Elena felt like a ghost in her own life, fading into the background she had painted for them, her colors dimming with each concession. The psychological wound ran deep, a childhood where her needs were secondary to her parents' chaos, teaching her that love meant self-erasure, that visibility came at the cost of conflict, that safety lay in invisibility. In Mark, she projected her disowned strength, hoping he'd validate what she couldn't give herself, turning him into a canvas for her unclaimed power, a substitute for her own agency. But the resentment built silent and corrosive like rust eating away at metal, until one night alone on the balcony under a starless sky, she realized this wasn't partnership. It was hiding from her shadow, a refuge from the self she feared to face away to delay the reckoning. Jung would say this shadow, the Carl Jung Shadow, isn't evil. It's the repository of our potential, the wild authenticity we've banished to survive in a world that demands conformity, the untapped reservoir of energy waiting to be reclaimed. Elena's reveal came in waves first, the pain of admitting she'd abandoned her dreams for approval, the grief washing over her like a sudden rain drowning out the pretense, then the liberation in seeing how solitude could reclaim them, how the quiet could amplify her voice, turning whispers into roars. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, Jung wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. For her being alone stripped away the distractions, forcing her to confront the anger, the unmet desires, the parts she deemed too much or too messy, integrating them like threads in a tapestry long left unfinished, each stitch a step toward completeness. Now imagine your own version, that nagging doubt in quiet moments, the way you compromise until your voice feels foreign, a stranger in your throat, echoing with unfamiliarity. This is the emotional breakthrough, recognizing that relationships often serve as buffers against individuation. The Jungian journey toward integrating all of you, the light and the dark, in harmonious dance, a process that demands solitude to unfold. We seek anima or animus in others, the inner feminine or masculine. We've neglected turning partners into saviors, instead of mirrors projecting our incompleteness outward, rather than turning inward to mend it, to weave it whole. But here's the twist, the mid-video disruption that might unsettle you, shaking the foundations of what you've believed. What if the loneliness you fear is actually your soul's insistence on growth, a fierce guardian, refusing counterfeit connections, demanding you build from within before inviting another society, sells coupling as completion, a neatly wrapped package of happiness. Yet Jung knew true union starts within, that external bonds can only reflect the internal ones we've forged, and without that foundation, they crumble under pressure. Ignore this, and you perpetuate the cycle, projecting shadows onto others, repeating wounds like a broken record, trapped in patterns that promise fulfillment, but deliver only echoes of what could be. Embrace it, and the narrative reframes solitude, becomes the alchemical fire, transmuting pain into power, base metal into gold, revealing the strength hidden in vulnerability, the beauty in the broken. Another layer through a mini-case, one that dives even deeper into the human fray. Jordan, 38. A teacher from Seattle ended his engagement not from lack of love, but from a haunting realization that dawned during a rain-soaked walk through fog-laden streets. His wound stemmed from a family that prized harmony over honesty, leading him to suppress his adventurous spirit for stability, to cage the wanderer within for the sake of normalcy, to trade exploration for predictability. In his fiancée, he saw the freedom he craved, but it was projection. A Carl Jung shadow dance, where he cast his disowned wildness onto her, expecting her to live it, for him to embody what he denied in himself. The reveal hit during a solo hike through misty forests. Being single wasn't emptiness. It was space to heal, to integrate the explorer he'd exiled, to let the repressed energy flow, like a river unchained, carving new paths through old terrain. The pain raw, like shedding skin too tight, exposing tender layers beneath vulnerabilities long guarded. The insight. Loneliness is the transcendent function at work, bridging conscious and unconscious, birthing a fuller self from the union of opposites. A rebirth that feels both terrifying and exhilarating, a call to rise. This revelation isn't easy. It disrupts the fairy tale we've been sold, the myth of happily ever after found in another's arms, forcing us to question the stories we tell ourselves. Yet it liberates. Each wound once seen and held loses its grip, transforming from chain to key, unlocking doors you didn't know existed. Reflect. What shadow have you projected onto past loves, and what would happen if you called it home? And how might reclaiming that part change the way you move through the world? Journal that now, letting the words flow without censorship, and feel the shift as we move toward turning this awareness into acceptance, into action that heals. Hold that journal prompt close. What emerges might surprise you, guiding your next step inward, one breath at a time, with gentleness. Every time you stay, you teach them you're fine, being unseen, reinforcing the very invisibility you resent. The silence that echoes louder than words. You've stared into the split, felt the reveal's sting. Now comes the pivot, where pain cracks open into possibility, like dawn piercing a long night, casting light on paths previously shrouded in uncertainty. This is where self-acceptance whispers, "You're not broken. You're becoming," a gentle affirmation that echoes through the chambers of your heart, soothing the raw edges. Choosing solitude isn't retreat. It's the brave act of reintegrating your Carl Jung shadow, turning wounds into wisdom scars, into stories of resilience that inspire rather than hinder. Picture this through a story that echoes so many silent struggles, one laced with the grit of real life. Sophia, 29. A marketing exec in New York, always the giver in her relationships, the one who anticipated needs before they were voiced, who bent like a willow in the wind. Her wound, a deep-seated fear of abandonment from her parents' divorce, a fracture that made her cling to partners who mirrored that chaos, repeating the cycle of instability she knew too well, chasing echoes of security in turbulent waters. She stayed single after her last breakup, not by choice at first, but necessity, the relationship crumbling under the weight of her unaddressed fears, leaving her adrift in a sea of questions. In the quiet of her small apartment, the shadow emerged, anger at her own people, pleasing grief for lost years spent in service to others, a raw confrontation that left her breathless, trembling with the force of it. But here's the turn, the unexpected microclimax that shifted everything. She began small rituals like evening walks through bustling streets where she'd voice her truths aloud to the anonymous crowd, letting the words dissolve into the night air, freeing them from her chest. Jung's individuation unfolded gradually. The wounded child archetype softened as she nurtured herself with compassion. Her inner lover, awakening not in dependence, but in self-compassion, a shift that felt like coming alive after years of dormancy, like colors returning to a faded photograph. The healing insight pain once understood and embraced becomes a portal to uncharted territories of the self, a gateway where suffering alchemizes into strength. Sophia integrated her shadow by embracing solitude's gifts, creative surges that led to a side project, blooming into passion, unfiltered dreams that guided her career pivot. A strength she hadn't known resided within her quiet resolve, emerging like a phoenix from ashes. From dependence to freedom, she reframed her story. I don't need completion. I am whole, a universe unto myself, vast and self-sustaining. This balance of realism and hope shows it's messy. Nights of doubt creep in like uninvited guests, moments where old patterns tempt with their familiarity. But each step builds resilience, each choice reinforces the new foundation, turning vulnerability into armor. Another glimpse into this transformation, one that confesses the intensity. Alex, 35. A writer from Austin faced his animus projection after a string of serial dating that left him exhausted, hollowed out by the chase. His wound suppressing vulnerability to appear strong, a mask forged in a childhood where emotions were weaknesses, where tears were signs of defeat. Alone in his sunlit study, he journaled shadows, uncovering repressed tenderness beneath the armor layers, peeling away like old paint, revealing fresh canvas beneath. The turning point. A moment of surrender during a dawn meditation where integration sparked creative energy, flowed like never before. Inner peace bloomed in the spaces once filled with noise, a confession of softness that felt revolutionary. Jung reminded us, the shadow holds gold. If we dare mine it, treasures that enrich rather than diminish, gems unearthed from the depths. This phase isn't magic. It's effortful grace, a dance of patience and persistence amid the stumbles. Reflect what first step toward self-acceptance calls to you today. A walk, a journal entry, a silent affirmation. And another. How might integrating your shadow change the way you show up in the world, inviting authenticity into every interaction? As shadows merge with light, hope rises like a tide. Let's carry this into the gentle return home where wholeness awaits with open arms. Try that small ritual today. Notice how it eases the inner storm, how it brings a whisper of peace that lingers. Now breathe into this space you've carved. The return isn't about fixing fractures, but remembering the wholeness that was always there. Like coming home after a storm, the air fresh and charged with renewal, carrying the scent of possibility. You've unraveled the illusions layer by layer. Now solitude feels less like a void and more like fertile soil where your soul can root deeply without apology, nurturing growth in its own time, blooming in unexpected ways. This reconnection is subtle, a quiet blooming that unfolds petal by petal, revealing colors you forgot you possessed. No longer chasing external validation, you meet yourself with kindness, integrating the Carl Jung Shadow as an ally, not enemy, a companion on the journey, rather than a foe to conquer, a source of strength drawn from the once dark corners. Emotional suppression fades like mist in the sun. Authenticity flows freely, a river, finding its natural course, meandering through landscapes of the self. Inner safety builds through simple acts, mornings of reflection over coffee, evenings of unhurried presence with a book or a thought, moments that anchor you in the present, grounding you amid life's whirl. Jung saw this as the self emerging the core beyond ego's games and illusions, a timeless essence that withstands the tempests of life, radiant in its quiet power. Peace settles in waves worth isn't proven by partnership, but felt in your own company, a quiet certainty that radiates from within, illuminating the path ahead. Soul maturity unfolds here, wounds reframed as teachers who imparted lessons in disguise, guides that led you back to center with wisdom, hard-won. Being alone transforms into sacred companionship. With your depths, a dialogue with the infinite parts of you, conversations that enrich and expand. Linger in this remembering. It's the gentle hold you've craved all along, the embrace that says, "You are enough," whispered from your own heart. Extend this emotional high. Imagine the freedom in waking without compromise, the joy in pursuing passions unshared, the strength in standing solo, yet connected to all a web of interconnections that sustain. What if you paused now, feeling that inner embrace wrap around you like a warm shawl, soothing the remnants of old aches? It guides us toward awakening, a soft unfolding that promises more. Sit with this peace for a minute. Let it anchor you before moving on, absorbing its quiet power, letting it seep into your bones. In this spiral's close, hear the whispered permission. Staying single isn't evasion, it's fidelity to your deepest self, the radical choice to remain whole amid a world that urges compromise at every turn, a stand for authenticity in a sea of conformity. As Carl Jung reflected, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Let loneliness be your compass, signaling you're on the path to true love, starting within, radiating outward, drawing in what aligns. If this resonates, comment your shadow insight below and subscribe for more steps in your journey. You've been seen. Now step forward renewed. The moment you stop seeking to fill the void is the moment you discover it's already full. And in that fullness, everything changes, blooming anew.